2013, a rock the size of a building hit Earth. Nobody saw it coming. Not one telescope, not one radar, not one warning system on the entire planet. It exploded with the force of 30 nuclear bombs, and we found out when windows started shattering. That was a small one. Here are the events in space that actually kept scientists up at night. The Chelyabinsk strike and the invisible threat. At 9:20 in the morning on February 15, 2013, residents across the Chelyabinsk region of Russia looked up and saw the sky turn white. A fireball brighter than the sun ripped across the atmosphere at 40,000 miles per hour. Dashcam footage captured the moment the sky simply ignited. 18 seconds later, the shockwave hit. Windows across 6 cities exploded inward simultaneously. A factory roof collapsed. Car alarms erupted across the entire region. The blast wave circled the Earth twice, detectable on instruments as far away as Antarctica. The asteroid that caused all of this was roughly 65 feet wide. It detonated 14 miles above the surface with the energy of 30 Hiroshima bombs. And not a single telescope, radar system, or early warning network on the planet had tracked it. It came from the direction of the sun, the one blind spot in our entire detection infrastructure. And it arrived completely unannounced. As of late 2024, astronomers have cataloged over 37,000 near-Earth asteroids, but those are only the ones we know about. Small, dark, fast-moving rocks are the hardest to find, precisely because they are small and dark and fast. A large dark asteroid can appear on telescope data to look like a small bright one, making our size estimates dangerously wrong. In 1989, an asteroid called 4581 Asclepius passed Earth at just 430,000 miles, barely further than the Moon. Astronomers discovered it after it had already passed. In 2008, asteroid 2008 TC3 was spotted only 20 hours before it detonated over the Sudanese desert. The next Chelyabinsk-scale rock could already be on its way right now, and the sun is hiding it from us. Tabby's star, the WTF star. About 1,470 light-years away, there is a star that has spent a decade making astronomers genuinely uncomfortable. Its official designation is KIC 8462852. Scientists nicknamed it the WTF star, and the initials stand for exactly what you think. When astronomers search for planets around distant stars, they watch for tiny, predictable dips in brightness as a planet crosses in front. A planet as massive as Jupiter blocks about 1% of a star's light. Neat, regular, explainable. Tabby's star dimmed by 22%. Something was blocking nearly a quarter of its total light output. A shadow so enormous it would cover roughly half the star's visible face, and unlike a planet, it didn't do it on any schedule. The dips were chaotic, irregular, sometimes lasting days, sometimes weeks. Scientists gave individual dimming events names, Elsie, Celeste, Scarbry, because they felt less like natural measurements and more like events. When no conventional explanation fit, scientists began seriously discussing something that normally belongs only in science fiction, an alien megastructure. Specifically, a Dyson swarm, a civilization-scale network of solar collectors being built around a star to harvest its energy. The SETI Institute pointed radio telescopes at it. Research teams scanned for laser signals. Scientists who had never publicly entertained the idea of extraterrestrial intelligence were co-authoring papers that listed it as a serious hypothesis. The answer that emerged was more mundane, but still strange. Analysis showed blue light was being blocked more heavily than red. A solid structure would block all wavelengths equally. Something semi-transparent was doing the blocking, almost certainly a massive cloud of fine dust, possibly the pulverized remains of a destroyed moon or a swarm of disintegrating comets, almost certainly. Every few years, Tabby's star dims again without warning, and everyone watches. Oumuamua, the object that shouldn't exist. In October 2017, a telescope in Hawaii picked up something that broke a fundamental rule, an object passing through our solar system that didn't originate here, moving too fast, on the wrong trajectory. It was the first confirmed interstellar visitor ever detected. Scientists named it Oumuamua, Hawaiian for a messenger from afar arriving first. Its shape was wrong. Data indicated it was either dramatically elongated like a cigar or flattened like a disc, proportions that don't match any known natural object. It was dark red from millions of years of exposure to cosmic radiation between the stars. But the shape wasn't the problem. The problem came when scientists tracked its path as it left our solar system. It accelerated, not by the amount gravity explains. Comets speed up near the sun too, but they do it by venting gas and dust, which creates a visible tail. Oumuamua had no tail, no dust cloud, no outgassing of any kind. Something was pushing it faster than physics said it should go. Harvard astronomer Avi Loeb publicly proposed it could be artificial, a derelict light sail from an advanced civilization. The Breakthrough Listen project pointed massive radio telescopes at it. Silence. The leading explanation today is that it was a dark comet made of heavily processed water ice. Cosmic radiation had trapped hydrogen gas inside the ice over millions of years. When it passed our sun, the heat released that hydrogen invisibly, producing thrust with no detectable exhaust plume. It's a good explanation, but Oumuamua is already gone, billions of miles away, past any hope of further study. It passed through our entire solar system, gave us 10 weeks to look at it, and left more questions than answers. The knocking inside the capsule. On October 15, 2003, Yang Liwei became China's first person in space. He was alone in the Shenzhou 5 capsule, orbiting Earth at 17,000 miles per hour. And then he heard a knock, not a creak, not a vibration, a knock, clear and deliberate, like someone tapping a wooden hammer against the outer hull. He stopped moving and listened. He pressed himself toward the porthole. Nothing outside, no debris, no explanation. The knock came and then stopped. Back on Earth, he tried to reproduce the sound for engineers. He couldn't. The same knocking was later reported by crews on Shenzhou 6 and Shenzhou 7. Yang reportedly warned future astronauts personally so they wouldn't panic when it happened to them. The most likely explanations involve thermal stress, the metal hull expanding and contracting as the spacecraft moves between the cold of Earth's shadow and direct sunlight, generating sharp percussive sounds. Micro-impacts from orbital debris are also candidates, but here's the uncomfortable part. There is no officially confirmed explanation. China's space agency has never publicly closed the case. Every crew that launches on a Shenzhou mission knows they may hear it. And every time they do, they still can't say what it is. The Tunguska event. The sky that exploded at 7:17 on the morning of June 30th, 1908. Something arrived over Siberia without any warning. Witnesses across hundreds of miles described a pillar of bluish light streaking across the sky, brighter than the sun, then a flash. Then a pressure wave that knocked people off their feet, shattered windows hundreds of miles away, and threw a man from his porch 40 miles from the center. In the days after, night skies from Western Europe to Eastern Asia glowed bright enough for people in London to read newspapers outside at midnight. When researchers finally reached the remote impact zone, which took nearly 2 decades, they expected a crater. Instead, they found 830 square miles of flattened forest, 80 million trees knocked down in radial patterns pointing away from a central point, except at the very center, where the trees were still standing, scorched bare, stripped to blackened poles, but upright, whatever it was never reached the ground. A stony asteroid, probably 150 to 300 feet across, disintegrated in a massive airburst roughly 5 to 10 miles up, releasing energy estimated between 10 and 30 megatons of TNT. No crater, no meteorite, almost no warning. Here's the detail that tends to silence a room. If that asteroid had arrived just 4 hours later, the rotation of the Earth would have placed St. Petersburg directly beneath it. 1.3 million people. Erased by a rock the size of a building. 4 hours. It happened in 1908. It can happen again tomorrow. The Lost Cosmonauts, Voices from the Void. In the late 1950s, 2 Italian brothers built their own radio listening station from salvaged parts and pointed it at the sky. They tracked Sputnik, they tracked Explorer 1, and then they claimed they heard something they were never supposed to hear. Over several years, Achille and Giovanni Battista Giudica Cordiglia recorded what they said were the final transmissions of secret Soviet space missions. Missions that went catastrophically wrong, and that the USSR quietly buried to protect its image in the space race. In May 1960, they captured audio of a capsule veering off course, its pilot drifting into the void. In November, a faint SOS in Morse code from a spacecraft slowly escaping Earth's gravity with no way back. In February 1961, the sound of a human being suffocating. The most disturbing recording came in 1963. A woman's voice, reportedly a cosmonaut with no official record, crying out as her capsule burned during a failed re-entry. After the Soviet Union collapsed, declassified records confirmed there were no cosmonauts lost in space. Analysts who studied the recordings found the voices didn't follow military communication protocol, made grammatical errors in Russian, and had accents that didn't match. Almost certainly misidentified signals, interference, and fabrication, but the recordings are still online. And they still sound exactly like what the brothers said they were. Listen to them alone, in the dark, and decide for yourself. The false vacuum. The universe may not be stable, This next one isn't a historical event. It's a possibility that physicists take seriously enough to publish papers about. And once you understand it, it tends to stick with you. Quantum field theory allows for something called a false vacuum. The idea that the universe may not be in its most stable possible state. Picture a ball sitting in a shallow groove on the side of a hill. It isn't falling. It looks stable, but it's not at the bottom of the hill. If anything nudges it, even slightly, it rolls down into a deeper, lower state. The universe is the ball. The deeper state is called a true vacuum, a region where the fundamental constants of physics are simply different, where the forces that bind atoms, that give particles mass, that make matter possible at all, operate by different rules that the atoms in your body are not compatible with. If a true vacuum bubble formed anywhere in the observable universe, it would expand outward at the speed of light, rewriting the laws of physics as it went. There would be no warning. Nothing travels faster than light, so the information that the bubble exists cannot reach you before the bubble itself does. One moment, everything is normal. The next moment, the rules that make you possible have been replaced. No pain, no awareness, just not. The Higgs boson's measured mass places the universe in what physicists call metastability. Not certainly a false vacuum, but not certainly stable either. The quietly unsettling part. It may have already started. Somewhere in the observable universe, a bubble could be expanding right now. We would not know. We cannot know. We would simply stop, mid-thought, with no warning and no explanation. Apollo 10's music behind the moon. On May 22, 1969, the crew of Apollo 10 swung around to the far side of the moon and lost all radio contact with Earth. No signal in, no signal out. The most isolated human beings in the history of the species, floating in complete silence above the lunar surface. And then something came through their headsets. A sound, wavering, eerie, sustained. Astronaut Eugene Cernan described it as outer space-type music. It wasn't static or a brief glitch. It played for nearly the entire hour they spent behind the moon. You can hear them in the recordings, talking to each other in quiet, measured voices. Do you hear that whistling sound? Boy, that sure is weird music. We're going to have to find out about that. Nobody will believe us. The recordings were classified for years. When finally released, people found the sound genuinely unsettling, sustained, alien, hard to write off as mere interference. The explanation has been known since 1974. Radio interference between the two VHF systems on the command module and lunar module, when both were powered on in close proximity. Michael Collins, Apollo 11 pilot, wrote in his memoir that NASA technicians warned him about it before his mission. He said plainly, if nobody had told him, it would have frightened him considerably. The sound stops the moment the lunar module lands and the two radios are separated. Every subsequent Apollo crew heard it, knowing what it was. Only Apollo 10 heard it blind, alone, behind the moon, with something playing in their ears that had no name. Space doesn't hate us. It isn't trying to kill us. It simply continues, on a scale and at a pace that makes everything we fear feel both tiny and completely valid. Every event in this video happened without warning, without asking permission, in several cases without us knowing until we went looking. The universe has been doing extraordinary, violent, and inexplicable things for 13.8 billion years. We've been watching for maybe 400. We are new here, and there is still a great deal we haven't seen yet.